A very common topic with job seekers is when and how to follow up. A follow up strategy is an important part of any successful job search. So, what is follow up? Why is it so important? We obviously understand that it's important in some way, and that is why you wanted to listen to this. But we'll get into the nuances of really what is it that makes follow up great in so many ways. There are lots of different ways to follow up, and it could look like a LinkedIn message, a phone call, a voicemail. In some industries, it's appropriate to text to follow up. But what makes sense for you? Let's take some time to look at actual strategies. The inherent energy behind a follow up needs to be gratitude, genuine, sincere gratitude. I like to think of it like this. Demonstrating a little bit of subtle flattery can go a long way. Overt flattery that feels fake to you and obnoxious is not the right fit. Of course, we're going to avoid that. It feels off to say, and it feels off for the recipient to receive. But genuine gratitude and flattery that builds relationships is the way to go. And we know the data is super clear that the way the vast majority of job seekers land their next role is through networking. So the idea behind follow-up is to build those relationships, sincere interest. Again, it's important to emphasize things like genuine gratitude and sincere interest because people can tell when someone's not quite being themselves. So when you're doing that follow-up, for instance, from that interview, the thing that you're commenting on, really being interested in, I'm really interested in the role, for instance. Well, that doesn't say a whole lot. That's nothing specific. I can't really tell if you're all that sincere. So specific interest really helps. And follow-up can be an opportunity. So this person has helped me in the networking process. I read a white paper that relates to the presentation that you need to give next week. Or I was thinking it might really benefit you to be introduced to person X, Y, and Z. So there can be that mutual beneficial piece as well. I want to emphasize that even though these touch points of follow-ups can seem delicate and they're tricky to figure out exactly the nuance of what to say, they're surprisingly strong. A little thing like a thank you for telling me to reach out to so-and-so. She was knowledgeable about the CPG industry. Something as little as that builds more of a strength in your social network than you might realize. It's the little kinds of touches that make such a big difference. It gives you the opportunity to display sincerity and to set you apart from other individuals. A surprisingly low amount of people supposedly send thank you notes after an interview, for instance. So this is an opportunity for you to sincerely communicate, hey, I'm interested. I value your time. And I'm an organized human being. It also helps people understand you and your interest more specifically. Say, for example, you have a 30-minute conversation with someone in your network, an informational interview, for instance. You talked a lot about different things in those 30 minutes, varied topics. The things that you choose to follow up on say something about you. So, if you choose, for instance, in your follow-up to mention something that you could just tell by talking to them was very important to them or was something that they were really passionate about, if you chose that thing, that shows you're paying attention. You're someone who's a great listener. If you choose to express how enthusiastic you are about where the industry's going or all the good things you've heard about employee engagement in that company's culture, that says something else about you. If you choose to also mention in your follow-up the fact that that person who met with you was hosting a birthday party for their 3-year-old twins on Saturday, and you chose to include in your follow-up the whole message and then good luck with having 23-year-olds in your house on Saturday, sending you all kinds of good thoughts, also shows that you care. Just a few examples of how you can nurture that relationship through your follow-up. What do we see so commonly in follow-up? Follow-up that's too generic. Thank you for your time. I appreciated learning about the role. Okay, if I received that, I used to do a lot of hiring. I would just think, this person's checking the box. They didn't display anything that we really spoke about. They didn't convey to me that they were listening. And yes, They're saying that they're really interested, but they're not showing it. It makes me think of my high school English teacher who said, "Show me, don't tell me in your writing." Being too generic is super common. It's better than doing nothing at all, but make it more specific. Next is too often. This is another one that will really rub people the wrong way. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand is some people not doing as much follow up as they should because they're worried that following up too often is not a good thing. If this is you, you're not alone. So check in with yourself, ask yourself, be honest. Is the fear of following up too often keeping me from getting clarity or moving forward with my job search? So it's kind of like the Goldilocks level of follow up. Not too much that you're overwhelming and off putting, or that you come across as demanding, or someone who doesn't understand that there's a lot going on at the organization or in a person's life, but you also don't want to do too little that it feels like you've given up too soon. So consider how you can switch up your follow up so that you get a bit more traction. For instance, if you followed up with someone on LinkedIn the first time and you haven't heard, well, you shouldn't send them 3 more LinkedIn messages the next day. We know that that's obvious, but I do see oftentimes people will send an email, no reply. Then they send another email 3 weeks later. They may have given it too much time. In an interview process, for instance, the other candidates could have been hired in that time. So there's that balance that we need to strike. There's a few main buckets of follow up to focus on. For the networking follow up, that might come from having gone to an event. Maybe you received a few business cards or met a couple nice people. Now what? You'll want to connect on LinkedIn and then write them something as a follow up. Another example of networking follow up is informational interviewing. For instance, wow, I'm really interested in this new line of work. I've always been in accounting, and now it's time for me to really explore marketing. That feels like such a big jump. What do I do? It's time to talk to some people, getting that meeting and then following up after it. Next is job applications. I get this question a lot. I applied online. Now, how soon do I follow up? And then how do I follow up again after that? And what if I know someone there? Or what if I know a few people there? That interviewing stage, we all know that we need to send a thank you note, but should I be sending it handwritten to convey that I'm really interested? Or should I send an email? And how long should it be? And what does that follow up look like exactly in the offer stage? Often what happens is that the offer comes and they want to know right away. We give a verbal yes. And you're meanwhile wondering, well, okay, this is a great offer. This is the company I'm interested in, but I have a few other ones that are out there that are higher on my list. Should I tell them that I got the offer? And meanwhile, what should I tell the people that just gave me the offer? I want to make sure I'm not burning any bridges and I want to preserve that relationship. So all kinds of nuances here to follow up involved, as well as after the offer's been accepted, following up with your network, the individuals who helped you in your career and transition, as well as following up with some of the other offers that are still, other opportunities lingering out there. So lots of things to think about. So at the networking stage, when networking, you should follow up with everyone you meet and come into contact with, including people you meet at events, people you're introduced to, people you identify and contact directly, and anyone who can be considered a networking contact. Timelines for reoccurring and immediate networking follow-up. So when networking, there are generally 2 types of follow-up. Immediate follow-up occurs within 24 hours of meeting a contact. When someone's referred you to another person, be sure to follow up in 5 to 7 days with the person who made the introduction and right away with the person you were introduced to. Reoccurring follow-up is maintaining relationships, and this is just as important as making the initial connection. Set a reminder to follow up with people you meet at least once per quarter or sooner if they're a target contact for you and you have new information to share. The idea of ongoing or reoccurring networking and follow-up is to cultivate, sustain, and grow your network. So some best practices are to keep records and document your conversations, respond within an acceptable time frame, show gratitude and provide a very brief summary of your meeting, address any questions that may have come up in your initial meeting and make reference to key points, and provide some form of give back value. So maybe an interesting article or share a new resource that they might be interested in, and suggest next steps for future follow-ups and ask permission to check back with them. Then we have job application follow up. You should follow up at several points during the application process. Follow up is important if you wish to apply to an open position at an organization and have found an internal contact, or when you've already applied to an organization and want to follow up with the internal contact. So, after applying online to an open position, it's best to follow up within 24 to 48 hours. So, think about finding key contacts on LinkedIn if you don't already have any. When someone shared your resume with a contact at a company, it's best to follow up within a week. Don't be afraid to send an additional follow up message if your first message gets no response. Tenacity is important in this process. Do not, however, badger your contact with emails on a daily basis. Follow up twice after your initial message and then focus your energies elsewhere. Some of the best practices include, when possible, keep control over your resume. Ask if you can send your email directly to the contact. However, accept if they refuse to provide you with that contact information, because that does happen. And always find a contact name and email from your target company to follow up with. Don't use that excuse of not being able to find anyone. Keep records and document your conversations. When following up, reinforce your fit for the role that you're applying for. Focus on where you can make an impact and add value and solve challenges. And suggest next steps for future follow-ups. And again, ask for permission to check back in with them. Then we have the interview stage. Following up after an interview is crucial. It's your opportunity to further demonstrate the strength of your candidacy by sharing that you understand the challenges faced by the organization and can provide solutions to those challenges. Your follow-up should be thoughtful, show that you're enthusiastic about the position, and outline why you feel you're the best person for the job. Your note should build upon what was discussed during the interview, not repeat the content of your resume again. So, as far as this follow-up, you should follow up within 24 hours of any type of interview, whether that's phone, video, in person, or panel. And because decisions are often made quickly, email is best. But if you wanted to, you could send a second written thank you note if you wanted to. You should follow up with everyone you interviewed with, as well as the recruiter or hiring manager who set up the interviews. And finally, you should follow up with anyone who helped you get the interview in the first place. Then, after your initial follow-up, it's appropriate to follow up a week later, unless they told you otherwise, and continue to follow up this way until you've been told the position is filled or your efforts garner no response after a few attempts. When you've been informed the position's filled, you should follow up with the hiring manager, thanking them for letting you know, thanking them for their time, and reiterate that you remain interested in working for the company should something come up in the future. And then transition follow-up. So your follow-up is not complete the second you land your next opportunity. To effectively transition out of your job search and into your new job, you want to tie up any loose ends and close out your search. So follow up with a few key people at this point. Any hiring managers or recruiters with whom you still have pending conversations or activity, anyone who helped you along the way to finding your new job, and your network. So it's best to complete your transition follow-up as soon as possible after accepting your new job. After this initial follow-up, don't neglect to keep networking. You never know what the future holds, and by keeping your network active and continuing your networking efforts, you will continue to have options in today's rapidly evolving job market. So set yourself a reminder to follow up quarterly with key contacts. Keep in contact. Don't lose touch. So here's a summary of the most important best practices for networking follow-up. Keep records and document your conversations. Respond within an acceptable time frame. Show gratitude and provide a brief summary of your meetings. Address any questions that may have come up in your initial meetings and make reference to some key points. And remember to provide some form of give back or value add. Remember, networking is mutually beneficial. and suggest next step for future follow-ups and ask permission to check back in with people. I'll close out this with the infographic. It truly depicts the importance of the thank you follow-up. So nothing says hire me like thank you. 22% of employers are less likely to hire a candidate if they don't send a thank you note. 86% said it shows a lack of follow through when they don't. 56% said it indicates the candidate isn't really serious. And 89% said it's okay to send that thank you note in email. So next steps will be make sure you put these follow-up strategies into place.